So today I'll be tutoring you on the inspiration theories in biblical studies. But before that, we have to understand what inspiration is. So in defining what inspiration is, according to biblical terms, we say biblical inspiration is the belief that the Bible is inspired by God, meaning that God guided human authors to write the words of scriptures. Now, this concept of biblical inspiration is central to Christian theology, and it guides or aids authors in understanding the Bible's authority and trustworthiness. So I'll rephrase that it aids readers in understanding the Bible's authority and trustworthiness. So now let's move on to the theories of inspiration. Now, there are several theories of inspiration, but before that, let's have an overview of what I said earlier in concerning the definition of biblical inspiration. We have three aspects that falls under the definition of this biblical inspiration, and the first one is biblical inspiration refers to how God influenced the writing of scriptures. Second one is how it explains the divine and human roles in producing the Bible, and the third one has to do with the various theories that try to explain the nature of this inspiration, and these are the theories that we are going to move on next one. So now moving on to the theories of inspiration, the first one is the dictation theory. Now, what is the dictation theory all about? Well, before that, we have several theories of inspiration. For example, we have the dictation theory, we have the verbal plenary theory, we have the dynamic theory, we have the illumination theory, we have the neotogdos theory, we have the partial inspiration, and so on. So now to start with the dictation theory, what is this dictation theory all about? The dictation theory is all about how God proposes that He directed or He dictated the words of the scriptures to the human authors. That is to say that every word that is in the Bible was dictated by God to these human authors who acted as mere scribes or writers. The second aspect, sorry, before that, let's look at the three aspects of this dictation theory. The first one is how God dictated every word to human writers. The second one is how writers were like passive instruments, such as secretaries. And the third one was the criticism, which ignores human style or personality in the text. So now let's move on to the second theory, which is the verbal plenary and dynamic theories. Now, looking at the verbal plenary theory, this theory holds that God inspired every word of the Bible and also guiding human authors to write exactly what he wanted them to write. And for the dynamic theory, this one suggests that God inspired the thoughts and ideas of the human authors rather than dictating it. So this verbal plenary and dynamic theory is like the opposite of the dictation theory. And the three aspects of this theories includes that first one is every word is inspired, but writer styles remain. Is this theory is stating that the word was inspired, but the writers used their own style of writing, their own context of writing. And the second aspect is that the ideas were inspired, but not exact words. That means the idea was inspired, but it was not written word for word. The same way, like you paraphrase during an exam, you don't write word for word. That is what this dynamic theory is talking about. Now, it also emphasizes cooperation between God and human authors. So let's now move on to the next theory, which is the neotogdos theory. Now, this neotogdos theory has to do with this neotogdos unlimited theory is a theological perspective on biblical inspiration. This theory emerged in 20th century. Yes, in 20th century, particularly among Protestant theologians. Now, it seeks to balance the authority and inspiration of scriptures with a nuanced understanding of human and historical context. So there are three aspects also, like the rest I mentioned for the dictation theory, the verbal plenary theory, and so on. So the three aspects of this theory is the how the Bible becomes God's word during personal encounter, how the Bible is inspired in spiritual matters and not for history or science, and also how and also how the Bible focuses on faith and moral teachings over factual accuracy. So these are the three aspects under the Neo-Orthodox and Limited theories. Now let's move on to the next one. That is a quick recap on what we've done. Now I mentioned earlier the five major theories. Apart from that, I mentioned more than five but the rest are not included because they are not the major theories. But I mentioned them just to add them. So the five major theories here are the dictation theory, the verbal preliminary theory, the dynamic, neorthodox, and limited theory. Now, this theory shows how they have different views on how God inspires scriptures and how it is important for understanding biblical authority and interpretation. Okay, I'm done for today. Thank you. See you in the next class. Thank you very much.